I was going to call this bit like, why is Adolfo a better finisher than anyone else, even though Adolfo's finishing isn't very good? Um, and I was also going to use this to tie in a little bit about goalkeepers. So the first thing is, I'm going to put a goalkeeper on, right? So this is my goalkeeper. And we're going to have a player, let's say it's Adolfo, who is rushing through on goal. Right, we're gonna avoid the idea of other players around, and we're gonna say that Adolfo has got the ball here, right? And then we're gonna put another player who's player X, God knows what he is, who's got the ball here. Now, the next couple of things do sort of blow my mind, right? So, the first one is for a keeper, the best attribute for something like this is acceleration. Because the first thing that the engine wants to do is to see if the keeper can close this down. Because the goals are so small, if the keeper can close this down and get to here, then the striker is unlikely to score. However, if the keeper can close this down and get to Adolfo and get to here, Adolfo is still likely to score. The reason is there are two matrices for finishing. There is the finishing matrix and there is the passing matrix. So this guy who's got high finishing but low passing, when he gets here, it does a finishing check. Now, realistically, the only two places he can score are here and maybe like here. Okay, let's just say that they're those. So what it's going to do is going to check his finishing, and his finishing is basically going to hit the ball as hard as it can. Okay, it's your power shot. Um, and it has to check the finishing, but it also has to check the finishing power, which is a strength check. So this finisher has a finishing check and a strength check. And the strength check checks how hard he hits the ball. So even if this player gets a high roll on the finishing and a low roll on the strength, the keeper can save it because it's not a hard shot. If they get a low roll on the finishing and a high roll on the strength, they'll miss the target. For them to finish this, their finishing check and their strength check have to be high. They have to be good, right? Now the higher you've got, like so, Maxim would obviously score from here because his finishing, he probably can roll like a natural one and still score against any keeper. But if the player doesn't have good finishing, instead of making a finishing check, it makes a passing check. And a passing check does not get a strength check, it gets a technique check. So what that means is that as long as they have high technique, which they don't have to pass a check of, and they have high passing, they will pass it into one of these two corners, and the keeper can't save it. This is why when you have players that have really high passing up front and they seem to score loads of goals and it doesn't make any sense, this is why. Because the finishing check is harder than the passing check. And it defaults to passing for a lot of players because a lot of players passing plus technique is an easier check than finishing plus strength. Um, so this is what happens. Also, there are players with low finishing that because the goalkeeper's acceleration and they don't get to the ball, so there's more of the goal to hit. Obviously, there's a lot of other things into it, but this is something that blew my mind really. Now this isn't everything. This is just like a few different things. But I call this like the Adolfo conundrum. This is what I thought it was. Remember, it's every single tick. So if a keeper's got high acceleration, it makes it much harder for them to score. So in theory, for goalkeeper, you want acceleration, acceleration and pace way before you want reflex and handling, because they will cut the ball out more. So yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting that passing technique and finishing strength both do it. The fact that strength is part of the finishing is also insane. I'm going to stop that there. I'll upload these 4 videos, and then if anyone wants any more, or they want me to look under the hood, or explain like how stamina works, stuff like that, please let me know.